Talk, shop, pop, movies. Join us. Join us. Join us. Join us. Join us. Join us.
Y'all ready to talk about some BBC? I finally had the chance and the good reason to watch my 4K of Evil Dead 2 Dead by Dawn in my groovy collection. And all I have to say is, holy buckets, is that thing beautiful. Evil Dead 2 is one of the few films I've actually had in my collection on VHS, DVD, Blu-ray, and now 4K disc in multiple versions on most of those formats. But Evil Dead 2 in particular holds a special place in my heart because it is the first Evil Dead film I ever saw. I feel that's the case with most people, that they were somehow introduced through Evil Dead 2, because Evil Dead 1 was sort of a cult thing, and Army of Darkness is not called Evil Dead, which for years is why I did not know that even existed, but that's, a different story. I have fond memories of my father coming home from the video store, the old Mr. Movies that I used to rent from back in the day, with Evil Dead 2, because he, quote, said it was the only thing they had that he hadn't seen yet. The fact that I remember that so vividly is ridiculous, because I can hardly remember, something someone told me an hour and a half ago. It's a great memory. I have lots of, old Mr. Movies video store memories locked in the back of this thing here, in the vast, useless part of my brain, which takes up most of my headspace. It's one of the memories I have because my whole family watched it together. Me, my mom, my older sister, and we all had a blast. To this day, my mom still refers to this movie as the Workshed movie, even though she knows that it is Evil Dead 2. Got my nice Evil Dead 2 long sleeve Fright Rag shirt on. I think this is the first time I've had a chance to wear this. I probably owned it for almost a year because it just gets buried in the bottom of my drawer somehow. So, special occasions, right? Like I said, all four of us had a blast watching this movie. We were laughing, we were cheering at all the gross, awesome things happening, and it was hilarious and weird, and it was just offbeat to the point where we were just confused as all get out. It was just good enough and just cheesy enough to be perfect at that moment in time. And that's a special thing. You don't get that very often. So, being so into this movie, we, as soon as possible, went back and rented Evil Dead 1 to only be very confused and disgusted by it, because it was not at all the same movie, even though it technically, in part, is the same movie. Back then, we were like, why are there rape trees? Why is this same couple stupid enough to go back to the same cabin in the next movie? Well, younger self, here's why. Filmmakers Sam Raimi, Scott Spiegel, and actor-producer Bruce Campbell, the BBC that I often refer to. That guy right there. I'm just going to leave that on the floor for reference. I'm never going to hang it up anywhere else. They had a rare opportunity. They had the opportunity to remake and make a follow-up to their first film at the same time. That is a weird thing that doesn't happen often, if ever. Mainly because Dino De Laurentiis was convinced to produce Evil Dead 2 by Stephen King himself while they were producing Maximum Overdrive. So presumably hopped up on cocaine. Stephen King was talking about how amazing Evil Dead 1 was because he was one of the biggest names they could put on the poster who just absolutely loved the movie. Sam Raimi himself even credits him for being one of the reasons the movie is even as popular as it was to even get to the point of, giving them careers and have the potential of making yet another Evil Dead movie. Even though this film is a quasi-remake, that only lasts for maybe the first 10 minutes or so. The 3 of the 5 characters from the original film, the other couple, and Ash's sister, I believe, is the other character. I haven't watched that one recently, honestly. Just watched the second one to do this. But now I want to because it looks so good on 4K. They were ex-nayed from the plot to simplify it. So it's just Ash and his girlfriend Linda going up to the cabin. And then, they play the tape recorder when he goes to get the champagne, which I think is funny that he didn't realize there was a giant tape recorder in a book with a face on it when he set down the champagne earlier, presumably. It was little things like that always make me laugh. Yeah, the father of the girl who comes in later's voice reads out the Book of the Dead, making all the Kandarian demon ghost forces in the woods come out and take Linda, and then she disappears, comes back as a zombie thing, and he has to kill her and cut her head in half with a chainsaw while Freddy Krueger's glove is hanging in the background. If you didn't know that, that's back there because Sam and Wes had a fun little rivalry going on at the time. So after Ash has to destroy Linda in the
Work shed.
he is slowly driven madder and madder by the evil forces at work trying to take him. He even gets possessed himself right after the first film ends, 10 minutes into this film. That's the cutoff when he gets flying through the woods. I always thought he looked like he had melted Nestle Crunch bars on his face. That's just me. My wife said it looked like Cocoa Krispies, so I can't be too far off, right? So he is driven madder and madder by the evil army of the dead within the woods until the daughter of the cabin's owner, whose voice was on the tape, interrupts him, thinks, that he murdered her family and all that, and then they realize more shit's going on than they think. Blah, 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 blah. I'm just going to do this really fast because everyone's seen Evil Dead, and I don't want to ruin the whole thing for you. But yeah, long story short, he gets sent back in time to the Middle Ages, hence Army of Darkness. A lot of weird, wacky shit happens in between that I don't want to, ruin just in case you haven't seen it, but the basic plot is pretty basic because it's a cabin in the woods demonic possession movie. The movie boasts amazing makeup and practical effects done by the fine folks over at K&B Effects at the time, which is funny because according to every video I've been making about horror films throughout the last few months, apparently they worked on every single movie ever, because I think every video I've talked about them in, I know they've done good stuff, and I remember they worked on Army of Darkness, but I never realized they also worked on Evil Dead 2 until I was reading the credits. So I thought that was funny. But yeah, seriously, they made everything. They did like Tales from the Dark Side movie. They did, the Creep Show stuff. It's crazy. They did everything. There's records amounts of blood and gore on the screen, I think rivaled only by its predecessor and Peter Jackson's Dead Alive. As far as the most blood used on any film, I think Dead Alive is the champion, but Evil Dead 2 is right up there. But I can't praise the film's effects without giving credit to its best one, and that is Bruce Campbell himself. There is no actor in the world who is better at fighting himself or acting in reverse than Bruce Campbell. So if you want to know why I say BBC, it's because he's brilliant, Bruce Campbell. Nothing is like him. Even to this day in the Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness, he still fights himself better than anyone I've seen since himself in this film. I'm going to keep this one reasonably short because I could honestly go on for hours about this franchise because I've seen them so many times. These movies are important to me, obviously, if I haven't said that already. They are essentially a part of my DNA now. And these movies, the first in particular, is one of the main factors of why I even went into film school in the first place. So even though I may be god-awful at articulating, what I'm thinking with my mouth from time to time, believe me, I know what I'm talking about somewhere in here. If you haven't watched the Evil Dead films yet, or Army of Darkness for that matter, What the heck are you doing with yourself? Go out and buy them. They're all on 4K now. Go get that groovy set and pick up that Army of Darkness from Scream Factory. Nothing but good things. The original Evil Dead franchise is one of, if not my favorite horror franchise of all time. It's just a funny one because there's only 3 films. You know, when you think of horror franchises, you think of Freddy, Jason, Michael, where there's like a dozen movies in there. Not only that, the remake of The Evil Dead is also one of the best remakes of all time. I haven't even watched it since it came out in theaters, but it is fantastic. That too just got a Scream Factory 4K. I finally just bought the Blu-ray like, a month and a half before they announced that thing. The director's cut, unrated cut, and the theatrical cut or whatever. So I probably won't be picking up the 4K of that one because I haven't even watched the Blu-ray I bought, and there's no new special features on it, so there's nothing really besides a new transfer worth paying $30 for. I'll just put it that way. But nonetheless, it's an amazing remake, and there's Evil Dead Rise coming out supposedly in theaters. It was going to be a streaming movie, and then it was maybe going to be in theaters, and I think they officially announced it that it's going to be a theatrical release because it's doing very good in test screenings, because every Evil Dead movie is good, unlike every other horror franchise when there's a turd in there somewhere that everyone agrees is a big stinky fat turd. It is an interesting trilogy because each one of the films at one point or another in my life has been my favorite of the series. Evil Dead 2 was always my favorite going in because I was sort of disappointed by Evil Dead 1, having seen that the first time, because it was just so jarring and different. But upon reading how the films were made in a Book of the Dead, book, that's the thing that kind of got me into filmmaking and interested in film school, made me respect the first one so much that is my favorite one. When I was younger and discovered Army of Darkness for the first time, I watched that, ad nauseum, and that was my favorite for the time being until I just kind of outwatched it. But it's one of those things. Depending on the mood you're in, a different movie might be your favorite that day. And that's a very weird thing, but it doesn't mean the other ones are any worse. It just means I like this one today. But whether it's currently running as my favorite film in the franchise at the moment, Evil Dead 2 will always hold a more special place in my heart due to the reasons I said before, being the first one I ever saw and the nostalgia that it holds for me as a child. All in all, there's only one word I can use to describe the film, and that is
Groovy.
I am Derek, the Convicted Cinephile. I hope you are enjoying OCT2BER. I have another written that I need to record, I'll just say that. But thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.
Talk, shop, pop, movies.